Hello and welcome to Soul GPS. In today's video, what I want to talk about is a tactic of manipulation that narcissistic people use very often in their relationships. In fact, it is so common that I would say it's probably one of the roots of difficulties in these relationships with people. It will lead to self-doubt, lowered self-esteem, lowered sense of self-worth. It is going to lead also to questioning of your reality, feeling of loss of identity, and all sorts of other ailments like that. So it's very destabilizing, and oftentimes it is the result of not being aware that someone can do such things to you. And we're going to talk about that in detail in just a second. For now, I just wanted to welcome you to my channel. If this is your first time, then I'd love for you to click the subscribe button and check out my other videos. I have made a couple hundred at least, and they're quite informative and helpful for people who are dealing with the aftermath of narcissistic abuse. So thank you, and I also appreciate your likes and your comments. If you have any questions, if you have any insights about this specific topic, then I also welcome you to say that or just say hello and introduce yourself. If you are interested in work with me, I offer private coaching, and I also have an Unchained program on my channel, not on my channel, I'm sorry, it's on my website, and this is a 15+ hour 12-week marathon in which I have put everything that I know, everything that helped me to unchain myself from a trauma bond with a narcissistic relationship. So thank you and welcome, and let's get to it. So this is a very, very common tactic, right? Manipulation with narcissistic people. Why do they do this? Why do they twist the situation? Why do they gaslight? It's actually, the answer is really simple. It's to get what they want. Right? This is why they do this, because they have a goal and they want to meet that goal, and they want you to make it easier for them to get it. Right? It can be anything. It could be an advance at work. It could be marrying you. It could be keeping you at home, dependent on them. It could be using your money. It could be using you for sex. It could be using you for status, for anything and everything. But these are the kinds of people that don't necessarily believe in having a strong work ethic and getting things on their own in a fair and just way. They believe in exploiting people, exploiting others to get their goals met, and putting as little work as possible to get as much as possible. So how do they do this? They usually do this through manipulation on an emotional level. So they will invoke different kinds of emotions and engage you in a battle. And while they're engaging in the battle, while they don't have these emotions I'm going to mention in a moment, that gives them this advantage to continue talking to you and assaulting you with their lies and twisting the situation in their favor, until the point where you're exhausted, and at which point you're very likely to just give in, because you don't want to continue fighting. And the three most common emotions that they use in order to manipulate you, of course there are others, there's more than these three, but these three specific ones I'm going to talk about and use in this video are, number one, sense of guilt. So if you don't give them what they want, you're gonna be made to feel guilty. They're gonna use all sorts of arguments to make you feel this way, that you're hurting them, and this is not fair, and you have that and they don't. It could be like making you feel like you're so privileged, you don't understand what they're going through, and all sorts of ways to invoke in you that you're guilty. You're going to feel guilty if you're not going to give them what they want. Another really common emotion is maybe it's not specifically an emotion, but it's like this sense of obligation that you should do something because it's right. You know, you're in a relationship with this person, whether it's friendship, whether you are at work and it's your boss who's asking you to do these things. You have this feeling, this internal feeling like you should do it, you know, and it could be engaging in an intercourse with your husband, even though you don't want to, but you feel like you should, or, giving a sibling who's broke and bankrupt, giving them money because this is your sister and you should, right? Or anything else. So that feeling of should be an alarm. You know, of course, there are situations in which we're there to help each other, and this is why we have relationships, is to help one another, right? Help to prop each other up when we're not doing well, when we need help. But when it's chronic, when it's when it's manipulative in the sense that your emotions are being used against you, then you can be sure that you're being manipulated. And another very common emotion is fear, and that's usually used once the other two don't work. It's like they crank up the heat, and it could manifest in rage, yelling at you, throwing objects at you. It could take a form of threats, and so on, and other things. It could actually become physical at this point. So fear is another way to, again, force you to give in to them so that they can get what they want. So as I just said, this leads to an exhaustion, an emotional and physiological exhaustion, physical too, and giving in. And you know what, but here's the problem with these people. They're like black holes, right? So if you give them a little bit, that whole saying, give them a finger, they're gonna want the whole arm. That's a thing from narcissists, right? And it can be narcissists being afraid of giving even a little bit to someone else because someone else may then demand more. And if that's the case, it stems from projections, because this is how they are, this is how they operate. So if you give in to them, expect that they're going to want more sooner rather than later. The other way to look at narcissists too is that they're chronic victims. They have that deep sense of victimhood that they carry around, and that too sometimes just by default in a very subtle way can evoke that feeling of guilt within you. Even just that you had a better childhood, right? I'm going to talk about childhood in a minute, but even that you have a little bit more than they do. You had maybe a little bit of an easier life in some sense. That can, if you're a highly sensitive person, that can actually make you feel guilty just by being around this person. So it's something definitely worth noticing and observing in yourself. So how do they manipulate? I would say that the most common tactic, the most common way I've observed by working with thousands of people, is that they had a bad childhood. It is so incredibly common, and it works so well, I think, on people who are empathic and sensitive and giving and who want to rescue others and help others. It's so incredibly, it just works so well. It's so effective that it's really common. So what they're going to say is, and they usually do it very early in a relationship, shortly after they met you. Or if it's your sibling, then of course it's something that you just hear on a regular basis, it's just always there. But in like personal relationships, let's say you're going on a date with someone and they're telling you about themselves, they're gonna bring that up fairly quickly. That they had a bad childhood and their mother, their father were abusive towards them, or that they have a really bad boss and they're just under a lot of pressure. And they do this to evoke empathy in you, because when you have this empathy up front and it's activated, that mechanism it's working. You could say it's working all the way in your subconscious. Then it's so much easier for them to feed you with all sorts of stuff and stories and things, and they might not even have to tell you up front that they need your help. Just the pity story may be enough to invoke in you automatically the desire to help them, to the point where you may ask, well, is there something I can do? Do you need support? Or if you don't say that, and if this is heading towards becoming a relationship, you're going to be that much more prone to want to lean in and help and offer and be that giver, right? And if you're being manipulated, then you're going to get rewarded for that, and you're going to get rewarded a lot. You're going to be rewarded with compliments, with being told how incredibly sensitive and wonderful you are, and how much they appreciate and value you, which of course is going to make you feel so good and will motivate you to want to do more. So they invoke empathy by talking about their bad childhood, and then this may activate the desire to help and rescue the other person, and then they're going to take advantage of that, right? So that's usually how it goes. Now, this will be brought up many times in a relationship with them at different stages. So during the idealization stage, when they tell you about this, it is to test you. It is to create that within you, that almost euphoric state of how good it feels to be there for somebody else. But once you're in this more eroded stage of this relationship where you're being criticized, you're starting to fight back, you're trying to set up boundaries and establish them and keep them and defend yourself, right? Help yourself somehow. Then this is going to be used again to remind you that they're doing these bad things because they can't help themselves, because they've been damaged when they were young, right? And so that again will invoke that empathy. The anger will go away, will fade away, and now they're the poor victim again, and you get a restart for another cycle. What's interesting is that they also flip that, and rather than talking now about what a bad childhood they had, they're going to use your childhood story against you. So let's say that you were the person who was being abused, right? You were the person who had a very difficult time. They can use that further down the road of the relationship. Like in the beginning, they can offer empathy, right? But it's fake empathy, it's cold empathy. But later on, they can say that, well, there's something wrong with you, because you told me that when you were younger, your dad did this to you. So now you don't trust men, right? Very common form of manipulation to tell you that you don't trust them. So you should be more open. You should be more trusting, and that's why your relationship is suffering. So again, like putting the blame on you. There's this really great movie. It's a series, and it's documentary, so it's not a movie, on Netflix right now. It's called Bad Vegan. If you haven't seen it, check it out. This is a very good example how a woman is being manipulated by a man by this very tactic of you don't trust me, because if you trusted me, you would do this and me. And this was to extort money. This was to set things up for this person, and it could be used in many different ways. It could be used also in sex. So you don't trust me, but you should be open to doing this and that. But because you told me this and this happened in your past, then that's the blame. That's because of that. Or another one that's fairly common is you are too much of this and that because of what happened to you. So you are too sensitive, you are too naive, or you are too suspicious. Any opposite in any dual system could be used against you depending on what this person wants. So what we need to also really remember, and I think that this was such a key realization when finally dawned on me and I fully accepted it, is that these people live in an altered reality. They live in a virtual reality. They live in a place that is not grounded in truth. It's grounded in lies. And these lies have this tendency to change. They're flexible. It changes depending on what the person wants, depending on what kind of mood they're in, depending on their perception, depending on the circumstance. It's going to change, and they enforce that on other people to, again, of course, get what they want. So they're going to be bothered. The things that in the beginning were something that they idealized, whether you were a perfectionist, or you're very open-minded, or you're sensitive, or you're a hardworking person, or you're rich, or you're poor, or you're fit, or you're ill, or anything could be no longer liked, no longer approved, and no longer approved of. It could become actually something that now they don't want, something that bothers them. Your openness becomes your naivete, your perfectionism becomes a pedantry, your sensitivity is unnerving. So everything and anything can change all the time depending on where they are and what they want. So another thing to remember is that it's always to take advantage of you so that they have the benefit, right? Always so they have the benefit. So how are they able to do this? Well, these people don't have empathy, right? They don't have empathy. They don't have a sense of guilt. So while you have it in spades and it's being used against you, they don't have any. So it's no problem for them to barge forward, to continue having these arguments, to continue trying to bend you to their will, because they're not exhausted by the emotions that are so exhausting to you. Yeah. So, and what makes us fall into the trick over and over again, besides the rationalization, the ongoing rationalization that they have the reason because they've been so damaged and hurt and so on, and now it's your responsibility to save them and help them, is just not being able to fully comprehend that somebody could do something like that. And I really can empathize with this, because this was a hard one for me to accept and to come to terms with, because this deeply affected my paradigm of the world being filled with people who ultimately will be, saved, will be redeemed, that there's goodness at the heart of everyone. And unfortunately, that's not the case. Maybe it will be the case in a few hundred or 1,000 years, that our consciousness will evolve to that place where we will all have empathy. But unfortunately, the way things stand now is not only that there is a huge chunk of population of people that are evil, let's just call it by what it is, that are highly manipulative, that are very angry, and that want to do damage, that want to hurt others, that are sadistic. There's a huge amount of these people, and that number, unfortunately, is growing for a variety of reasons. So it's even more the reason to come to terms with the truth and arm yourself with knowledge and having the ability to recognize these tactics, these forms of manipulations when you see it, and accept the fact that somebody could do that to you. And I know it is so difficult to realize this. It's so painful. It helps when you have good people in your life already, that you can trust, that you can lean on, and hopefully the people who are exploitative towards you are not that many. But sometimes when we wake up to this truth, it can feel like everyone is like that, right? And we feel very isolated. So I empathize with that, and I understand that, and it can be very, very difficult. But the risk of not acknowledging it is the continuous, manipulation. Now, we have to be careful with not thinking that everyone's like that, because we're shades of gray. In different situations, sometimes we may encounter people who are under a lot of stress and who are doing things that maybe are not perfect, or 100%. Pure, but I'm talking about people who are really, really evil and really exploitative, and it's really important that we, take a step back and move away from these kinds of, because they can leave, a trail of carnage behind them. So what's the solution here? It's not easy, unfortunately, and it takes time, but ultimately you want to come to a place of awareness, and you want to come to a place of observation. The awareness, something that I just mentioned, is that there are such people, accepting that, and being okay with that, not fighting it, because we can't win that war. It's just what is. But that doesn't mean that you have to be exposed to that on a regular basis, and also it doesn't mean that you have to fall victim. to this thing, right? So in this case, what's really important is to cultivate observation, both of the other and of yourself, and just notice the game that certain people are playing. Notice how you feel around them. The great thing that we have is our bodies are so finely tuned to truth versus lies that you can actually feel it in your bones. And if you do have this feeling of disgust that wells up within you, then you can be sure that something's up. And I think what's important is to have enough self-trust to give yourself the benefit of the doubt, to consider that you just may be right before the mind kicks in and begins to rationalize and tell you that no, this person had a bad childhood and they're just like that because they were damaged and hurt, and I shouldn't be taking these warning signs seriously. It's not true, you should. So this is what I'm going to leave you with. I hope this video was helpful. Do let me know. Again, if you'd like to work with me, I'm available, and I'd love to engage with new clients. So you're welcome to contact me. All my information is below this video, and I send you all the best from where I am. Stay strong, keep learning, and keep moving forward. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.